Thank you very much, dear Günseli, for this kind and long introduction.
I'm famous for long introductions.
And I would like to thank to the Barakat Trust and its advisory committee for giving me the chance, the opportunity to be here for the second time after 11 years. And also to the KRC and old friends here for making this research center my home for 3 months. And of course, I thank you all for your participation. I hope you will enjoy your time. Günseli didn't mention my engineering background. Some of you know it, but I need to underline this fact for those who don't, because the images you are about to see might make you think, did I come to the correct place? Because in this presentation, I will not show you any fancy photographs, beautiful drawings, or manuscripts. Instead, I will show you maps, charts, and timelines. You will see a lot from my engineering background. After all, my roommates I work with in the attic probably saw me often dealing with Excel spreadsheets and some coding process rather than a Word document. You are seeing the content of my talk on the screen now, but let me highlight one point from the very beginning. What I like to do is not only to share the results of my research project here, but also to demonstrate a set of techniques and digital tools that you may either adapt to your own work or create yourself. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, then let's begin with the genesis. The story has a slightly earlier beginning actually. When I was still practicing engineering at TÜBİTAK Space Agency in Ankara as a part of a team designing a satellite which might still be in the orbit today. It was around then that a trip to Istanbul led me astray. Once I had wandered through architect Sinan Şehzade and Süleymaniye mosques, the office I returned to in Ankara began to feel too small for me. In 2008, I quit engineering and moved to Istanbul. I had the mosques in the skyline of Istanbul project in my mind. Everything, including today's presentation, started with this. At its core, this project emerged from a simple question. As architectural historians, we often use historical documents and buildings themselves to understand them, right? But what if we reverse that relationship? What if instead of using history to explain architecture, we use architecture to read history? Let me invite you to imagine something. Imagine sitting at the top of Galata Tower and looking across the historic peninsula of Istanbul. Now, imagine that instead of watching the city for a few minutes, you could watch it for 500 years. Time begins to accelerate. Buildings appear, disappear, expand, collapse, and transform. New skylines emerge. Byzantine Constantinople gradually transforms into Ottoman Istanbul. This was the humble animation that I created in 2009. But it still works, doesn't it? Want to see it once again? Would that changing urban landscape tell us something about politics, about economic prosperity or decline, about social transformations, about cultural priorities and shifting systems of power? Actually, my current project is an attempt to explore answers to these questions. But we are not there yet. And this takes us to our next stop, Istanbul's derivative. It was the second year of my PhD, and I wanted to choose a very ambitious subject for my thesis. Instead of focusing on standard history, I decided to work on urban calculus. you now see a page from my initial notes, Istanbul's architecture history explained in formulas. Stripped of its notation, it says something quite basic and rather beautiful. How a city accumulates over time. There comes my initial proposal. Buildings as a way of reading history. Historical topography analysis of the transformation of the historical peninsula panorama along the southern shore of the Golden Horn between the 15th and 18th centuries. 3-word lines. How many of you studied calculus? I don't know. But is there anyone remembering those formulas on the left? Let me explain it briefly. Walk through Istanbul and you are walking through 5 centuries of decisions. Every mosque, fountain, tomb, and bathhouse was begun in a particular year by a particular patron for reasons that made sense at the time. Taken one by one, they are a catalogue. Taken together in the order they appeared, they become something else. A story of when the city wanted to build, when it could not, and what was pushing it in each era. So I corrected this with the derivative. Start with fx. Imagine standing at the year 1453, holding a running tally. Every time a new building goes up on the historic peninsula, a mosque, fountain, whatever, you add 1 to the count. Fx is simply that tally as it stands in any given year x. Okay? The total number of buildings the city has gathered up to that point. Plotted across the centuries, it becomes a curve that only ever climbs, right? A portrait of the built city slowly thickening, layer upon layer. Let's use another analogy. Think of a car's odometer and its speedometer. The odometer is the distance already covered, or running tally. The speedometer is how fast you are moving right now, the rate. So this line is called the derivative, f prime x. If fx is the total so far, then its rate of change is the speed at which that total is growing. So f prime x turns a plain, ever-rising tally into something far more expressive. The tempo or speed of building, decade by decade. Okay? Here is where the operators come in. Ta-da! And if you are done with my jacket, I need to take it off. Sorry. Here is where the operators come in. A boom or a silence never has just one cause. The same surge of construction can be read as a political story, an economic one, a cultural one, and so on. Each operator, TP, TE, etc., is best pictured as a colored lens you hold up to the tempo of change. Look through the political lens, and the rises and falls line up with conquests, reigns, and reforms. Swap in the economic lens, and the same peaks now track, trade, treasure, and crisis. Finally, Gx, another function, is the same idea pointed at a different stretch of the city, the shores of the Bosphorus rather than the Golden Horn, because both are written in the same language of tally and tempo. You can lay them side by side and watch how building life migrated across the city. How is it going so far? Please stand by. Are you still there or totally lost? To tell the truth, the jury evaluating my PhD proposal was puzzled. Not because of the formulas, I didn't show them anything. Believe me, I didn't show them those formulas, but because of the hard, endless work of researching so many structures from diverse periods. One of them, Zeynep Kuban, said, "This could be a good project, but not a PhD thesis." She was right, totally right. The technology back in 2010 was not enough to fulfill my ambitions, and I would probably go mad. I would have gone mad while trying to collect data of 1,000 buildings in Istanbul. Taking this advice, my PhD turned out to be the building activities of Güneş Emetullah Sultan, as Günsel has just said, and it is followed by the Berkat Trust postdoctoral fellowship here, and the woman who built the Ottoman world in 2017. But in all of them, actually, I used the long-term analytical approach that I had developed. It was a part of me. I did look at the big picture and manually follow the same approach. I identified shifts in Ottoman female architectural patronage, for instance, over 6 centuries in the long durée. And this takes us to the next chapter, Timeline Travel Project. We designed the Timeline Travel Project back in 2017, and we designed the Timeline Travel tool as a part of it. It was used by our students, and we compiled data for hundreds of buildings in Istanbul and elsewhere. But these data was also easy to generate tables like that, charts like that, and graphs by using the same tool. This would also give researchers, masters and PhD students invaluable insights. They highly used it, actually. Then in 2020, soon after the project's completion, I created the Timeline Travel app with my efforts, and we not only integrated the data previously created in the Timeline Travel project, but we also gave the users the chance of creating their own timelines. Our students were happy to make research and present their findings on the app, more enjoyable for them than usual presentations, and more attractive, as their timelines could be viewed by anyone who downloaded the app after an editorial check, of course. Then in 2022, we started with the Palimpsestis project, another KA2 project, this time targeting cultural heritage awareness. And its main output, Palimpsestis course, was using the Timeline Travel app again as one of its modules. These are the 7 modules of the Palimpsestis course, and you can find more information on the project website if you like. And recently, in 2024, a sister app joined Timeline Travel, the Palimpsestis mobile application. You can check both of these apps later if you like. Now, finally, we arrived at the year 2026. Well, let me start with my objective. The objective of this study is to analyze the evolution, ruptures, and continuities of Ottoman architecture in Istanbul from the mid-15th to the early 20th century, situating that development within its historical context and doing so by means of visual thinking tools rather than text alone. Beyond the analysis itself, the study aims to propose a genuine, alternative, reproducible methodology. The problem it answers is a real limitation of traditional historiography, and the proposed solution is a set of digital tools that reveal patterns of change invisible to linear narrative. And the challenge is the urban complexity of Istanbul and the documentation of the 500 years of architectural layers. 4 questions structure the framing of the project. Why historicizing? Because buildings must be read as products of their moment rather than instances of a timeless canon. Why visualizing? Because it gives us a deeper insight and easier comprehension. Why Istanbul? Because no other Ottoman city offers a comparable, continuously documented laboratory of imperial buildings. It was the capital. And why such a long period? Because ruptures and continuities only become legible at the scale of centuries. A shorter window would make mistakes for trends. The key terms of the title deserves a definition, a deeper definition actually. Historicizing means reading the development of Ottoman architecture in Istanbul through its historical ruptures. Well, it means reading an object not only through what it is, but through why it emerged at that moment and in that form. Evolution here is neither a linear progress nor a pure succession of styles, nor a story of decline from a classical ideal. The second operation, visualizing the evolution, is the most frequently misunderstood one. So it is worth being precise about what it does not mean. It does not mean assembling photographs of buildings, and it certainly does not mean producing a catalog of styles. Visualization is used here as a way of making historical change thinkable. The charts, maps, and animated silhouettes that you will see in a minute in the following chapters should be read in that spirit. Each one is an argument, not an ornament. A title of this kind also invites some traps, some characteristic errors. The first is homogenization, presenting Ottoman architecture as a single uniform Ottoman style. The second is the corruption narrative, a position current historiography has decisively abandoned. The third concerns the project's own tools, presenting visualization as if it delivered objective truth. No, every map, curve, or a silhouette in this study is an interpretation. Now let me briefly present my methodology. The short answer is timeline travel framework, but my methodology combines the systematic organization of historical data using digital tools and AI, merging time chronology and space maps into a unified chronotope, moving beyond visualization as a result and utilizing it as an active analytical tool, integrating data as interpretive overlays within the digital environment. Let me visually explain how this project is carried out now. The first stage involves determining the parameters of the dataset. In the second one, I built the corpus manually and with AI support. Then came the core part, charts, maps, and silhouettes, designing new tools for visualization, followed by the interpretation of the data with the help of AI again, and finally, I conducted analysis and offered a model. The data, the first stage, involved the construction of a database. I mostly borrowed it from the Timeline Travel project, as 3 researchers back in 2017 and 18, we had collaborated, and we also get support from ArcNet and Byzantine Legacy. And this database included some 300 Ottoman and Byzantine structures, detailed information, textual and visual information, and also more than 558 structures, basic records like location, construction year, patron status, blah blah. And in the second phase, in the second stage, I focused on expanding the dataset to address missing information. I supplied a selection of reliable scholarly sources in PDF format. I only show 2 of them here. Since I had used a similar approach in my book, I also directly borrowed some data from there. The system was introduced to identify the AI, identify relevant architectural information and convert it into entries compatible with the existing database structure. And of course, newly generated entries were checked, corrected, standardized and validated by me. And I need to show a disclaimer here. I won't read it up, but this is always a problem in history, actually. If no records are left, we might be missing some things which have already happened. Though I did add some monumental structures that have long disappeared, but I would also again say that this model might give a deficient picture of certain time intervals. So I put this disclaimer. And you might ask me, why not houses or smaller structures, but only monumental buildings? Because I am trying to analyze the significant buildings representing the elite and the flow of money. Besides this, the larger the sample, the better the data reflects reality. Yeah. And a few acknowledgements. Once the database reached a satisfactory level of completeness, I moved to the next phase. I used these 3 AI tools to create my own tools, which I will show you in a minute. And the data stopped being merely a collection of records and began to take visual form. Here they are. This is the Ottoman Istanbul Explorer. Using the data set, I developed 4 different digital tools actually. One generated maps and another transformed the data into analytical tables and graphs. A third transformed the data into readable timelines, and a fourth produced skyline visualizations. Each tool told the same story from a different perspective, basically. And another one, this one, shows these visualizations on a HTML page and sets the foundation for the most interesting part, the analysis, the interpretation part. I will show you all of them, but before that, let me take you to the next chapter. Let me state once again that rather than treating buildings as passive remnants of history, my intention is to approach them as active historical evidence capable of revealing long-term patterns. Sometimes those visualizations confirmed what historians already knew. You can maybe follow in here in the x-axis. Those are decades, so these are the building counts for the decades, and the black line shows us the derivative, the tempo or the speed of the constructions of architectural change, and it implied expected show that founding surge after 1453, the classical apex in the mid-16th century, a deep 17th century trough here, and the tulip era recovery, and the 19th century. Well, I think it should be similar in every city on the world, right? At other times, they revealed unexpected patterns, contradictions, and gaps. Those moments were often the most valuable ones because every inconsistency generated a new question. For instance, here we can see 470 years of Istanbul in a single image. Early periods shows us more monumental but fewer structures, and late period less smaller but many structures. So you can, by looking at this image, you can make too many interpretations. Actually, on the left hand side, you can see the importance, and that's a parameter that I inserted into the database regarding their size and importance. It was also possible to follow and super easy to visualize some typological changes. For instance, fountain boom in the 18th century or the impact of Tanzimat decree in non-Muslim religious buildings became quite obvious. It was also possible to make comparisons, while in the early periods cullies and tombs dominated, while in the late centuries residences, palaces, and modern types like hospitals, embassies, stations, and museums appeared. It became much easier to understand patronage shifts. In the classical centuries, sultans and viziers dominate. Female patronage is visible in specific eras. In the late period, some notable actors like foreign patrons, commandos, zarifis, embassies, and communities appeared. And it was also possible to see the regional and demographic changes. They all became evident. For instance, the historic peninsula share falls from 87% to 25% during the Tanzimat era, because the peninsula saturates. The Bosphorus rises, obviously, which you all know very well, and the Princess Islands appear in the 19th century as a new location for the buildings. Now I think I can show you my toys that I created one by one. I will leave Istanbul Skyline Studio to the end, but while watching, I will ask you to make this basic comparison in your mind. The time, energy, money spent in the past to create similar tools, which I have shown you in the previous slides, and the time, energy, barakat money spent during my short research visit in Oxford. I am now able to do the same work in a shorter time by using the logic of coding, actually, with the help of AI. So let me switch to this view. Okay. Let's start with the Istanbul Explorer, interactive Istanbul Explorer. Well, I think it tells about itself, right? If you go to the very beginning, 1453, because I set it to 1453, you can see how the city emerges on this 2D map. Well, you can, on the left-hand side, choose the color points by building type, if you like, or pattern rank, as you wish. You can make other choices. You can, other building types, or you can see just a single pattern's reign and its impact directly, or two of them. Or let me go a bit down. You can make stylistic comparisons, and you can see, say, only the works of the dynastic women. Or you can change the region, blah blah, or you can make some searches regarding the architects or patterns. Let me set the filters, and in the lower part of this tool you can change the axis, the x-axis, from this to this, or building type. But let me stay here. Let me make it sigma importance rather than the building count, and let's see different buildings appearance in different periods. You can click and omit some of them. So in that sense, you can see only one structure and its impact. Well, you can basically change the graph types, and you can introduce or hide the historical events like the Battle of Lepanto, and its impact could be visible. Yeah. This is the Ottoman Istanbul Explorer. The second one is the timeline, Istanbul People Timeline, Ottoman Istanbul People Timeline. Well, so many of us are dealing with historians, some scientists, some calligraphers, writers. Why not seeing them on a single page? And you can also have some information. By the way, these informations are, the sources are highlighted at the bottom, are borrowed from the web, not inserted manually. But we can also guide the AI to collect data from only some definite sources. This third one is, well, like a summary of all of those two. It shows us at the first page the change of the city from the Byzantine Constantinople to Ottoman Istanbul, with some kind of animations here. And you can see, remember those lenses on the prism that I've shown you a bit ago? So you can see the details about them in the following tabs. So I won't spend too much time on it. But you can animate, and you can see the centroids, the hub of the building, or the center of the buildings. But I will leave it to the, as I said, I will leave it to the end. So, after briefly demonstrating my toys, now let me come back to the 6th chapter of my presentation. At this stage, let's use these instruments to answer some of my research questions, because my workflow is best judged by putting to it the questions an architectural historian would actually ask and reading the answers from the figures. How does the patronal profile shift? Well, female dynastic patronage, remarkable in the classical age and the 17th century at about 18 to 22%, reflecting the architectural signature of the Sultanate of Women, collapses to 2 to 3% in the 19th century as commissioning passes to the state bureaucracy and to private and foreign capital. Another question, which building types or locations were favored during different periods? Well, the classical city again concentrates Islamic religious monumentality on the historic peninsula, because the mosque-centered külliye was the instrument by which a new Muslim capital was endowed and provisioned. In the 19th century, it favors residences, palaces, and a new class of public buildings like embassies, banks, and schools on the water and on the hills. You can see all of them from those graphs actually. Or let's take those maps. What were the limits of the city's expansion and when were these limits exceeded? For the classical centuries, the effective limit is the Theodosian walls and the peninsula it encloses. That limit is first tested during the Tulip era, when Sadabad and the Bosphorus pavilions of the 1720s were built for pleasure. And that limit is decisively broken across the 19th century when the extramural share passes 50% under Selim III and Mahmud II and reaches 3/4 under the Tanzimat. Let's take another question. Which historical events shape patronage? Well, the most notable positive signals were conquests of Suleiman I, capture of Crete in 1660s, interestingly, Tanzimat decree of 1839, and Reform Edict of 1853. So those were the most powerful pulses. You can see the dates on top. And the notable negative signals were the Jalali rebellions of 1595 and 1610 here, Vienna failure in 1683, abolition of the Yeniçeries in Janissaries in 1826, and Turkish Republic's proclamation in 1923 as Ankara becomes new city and Istanbul is totally abandoned for some time, of course. And the last question, when did patrons initiate their construction projects? I was keep asking this question also for the case of Ottoman women, and as I said, I was trying to answer them manually. But these graphs tell me that the Sultanic foundations clustering early within a decade of a conquest or an accession rather than at a reign's end. The foundation date typically marks the moment a regime felt secure enough to inscribe itself in stone, not the point at which it was exhausted. At this point, may I ask a question to you here? Well, we talk about this Toro during the 17th century. I mean, here, a big decline, and this peak is mostly due to the construction of the Yeni Valide complex in Eminönü, right? But why on earth for more than 50 years or maybe for a century, no construction in the capital? Well, my answer would be first the Kadizadeli movement, which was suppressing the constructions, but a more major one is the real seat of power moved to Edirne in most of the 17th century. So Istanbul became kind of a secondary capital, and it was neglected during that period. So actually these kind of graphs are also forcing us to answer that kind of questions. And let me show you the Istanbul skyline. This will also take us to the genesis, the mosques in the skyline of Istanbul project back in 2008. So this is the interface, which is called Istanbul Slate Studio. And you can pick a viewing point, like this is the historic peninsula. I thought about two different projection types. The first one is along a line, an orthographic projection. The other one is from a point, a panorama, like this. Let's place it to here. You can choose the angle, and you can even take look at different sides. You can enlarge it to 36 degrees, 360 degrees. But I think that is enough for now. And you can also change some parameters here, like the heading. But I think this is also fine. And you can choose colors if you like, but I would not prefer any color for now. And here comes our skyline. Well, not a perfect one, but this is an auto-generated skyline, and we can see, let me turn to this orthographic projection once again. Let me pick it to here. We can see the change of the buildings on the skyline, Istanbul skyline, in this animation. Let me close this historical events. Well, let's make it full screen, right? So actually I can configure the squares or the semi-circles or the cylinders as I wish, but it takes some time, you know. it wasn't finished completely, and you can, by clicking on them, you can see, you should see actually information about them. And let me exit now, and let me show you the colored one for the building type. You can understand, or let's go to this, the point panorama. Let's imagine that Henry Aston Barker is looking at the historic peninsula in early 19th century and drawing the view. You can locate the buildings in this view and compare it with the panoramas drawn in the 18th, 19th centuries, whatever. So, as I said, this tool still requires some work, but the previous panorama that I showed you took several weeks to compile it. But this one, I think a few weeks here, a few weeks work of here, and I can use it for any other point. I can look at the same panorama from Marmara Sea, and the view will change. And as you might guess, I can do the same for London, Paris, Rome, so it's a reproducible thing. Okay, let's go back to my presentation, and now I'm concluding. In conclusion, it is possible to read history according to different perspectives, lenses, by looking at the buildings. I hope I was able to share an alternative way of thinking. I believe this approach allows us to move, at least partially, from highly specialized academic research toward a form of public-facing scholarship. A person with no formal training in architectural history may struggle to understand centuries of urban transformation through text alone. Yet, when those same processes are visualized through maps, diagrams, timelines, and skyline reconstructions, long and complex historical developments become much easier to grasp. Rather than beginning with a predefined historical narrative and using digital tools to illustrate it, this study reverses the direction of inquiry. It asks whether long-term transformations in the built environment can themselves serve as a primary source for historical interpretation. In this sense, buildings are approached also as indicators of broader social, political, economic, and cultural change. A second distinguishing feature of this study is its deliberate movement across scales. Existing digital urban history projects often operate either at the metropolitan scale or at the level of individual monuments and sites. But this methodology proposed here is designed to remain analytically consistent across multiple scales, from an entire urban skyline to a single architectural complex like Topkapı Palace. And as I said, we can also apply it to Oxford, London, Rome, with the same workflow. I hope you will be using this or similar tools in the future for your research. Finally, the study contributes to ongoing discussions regarding the role of artificial intelligence in historical research. Unlike approaches that rely on automated analysis as a substitute for scholarly interpretation, this methodology integrates AI-assisted data extraction within a structured process of human verification and editorial review. Consequently, artificial intelligence functions as a tool for expanding and organizing historical data sets rather than replacing critical historical judgment. Taken all together, these characteristics position this project not simply as an application of digital methods to architectural history, but as an attempt to develop a methodological framework in which data construction, visualization, and historical interpretation become mutually constitutive stages of the research process. Well, my time here in Oxford came to an end again, and I'm leaving on Saturday actually. But this project is still going on. I will keep playing and improving my toys. But let me briefly share what's next. I hope I will be presenting in the Society of Architectural Historians next year. Abstract submitted, fingers crossed. And I'm also working on an article which might be targeting Mukarnas, still in progress. And my intention from the very beginning, from 2008, was to publish a popular science book. The Formation of Ottoman Istanbul could be the title of one, and the transformation of the Ottoman Bosphorus could be the other, and I'm planning to use all of these visualizations through them. Thank you for listening to me, and I want to say special thanks to Barakat Trust and Khalili Research Centre. Thank you.